Today on the Dragon Boys of Summer, we make TV recapping super again as we crack into the season 4 finale of The Boys. Guys, so much to discuss. It's been a show which is kind of divided opinion whenever we've got a chance to um, talk about it on this season of the Dragon Boys of Summer. But did season 4, did the finale pull the season back to where we wanted to be? Joining me this time for the first time on the Dragon Boys of Summer, he's always been and always will be 90% Pashmina, and he's here to go along with every word I say as if my hand were jammed up his tight little puckered asshole like the puppet he's always been. Ladies and gentlemen, getting used to the new intros as a lot of people are. It is my at the movies usual companion. It is the one, the only Tom Pot of the Pop Cup Pod. Tom, you're very welcome to the Dragon Boys of Summer. How are you?
Slightly scared after that intro. I'm so glad I remember that line of dialogue, because sometimes you say a quote and I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar, but I'm like, oh, thank God I know that was Homelander saying that. Otherwise, it would have been a very awkward conversation for the next hour or so.
Could just left, like, yeah, that's it, exactly. No, come back. It's a quote, I swear. Tom, it's nice to have you on the Dragon Boys of Summer. And just to give some context, like, you're very much a part of the page 180 kind of squad that we have here. Obviously, we discuss movies every month. But the reason that we haven't been able to have you so far, interestingly, and I want to crack into this because I think your story is a story of like kind of a lot of people these days, because on this we're covering The Boys today pretty much solely, but while I have you, I want to kind of tell this story because Game of Thrones would have been the show where you had to see it, because if you check social media or if you went into work or you spoke to pretty much anyone, you were getting it spoiled if you'd kind of missed, if you were outside of that Sunday, Monday window. House of Dragon isn't hitting as much yet, and you're one of the people who haven't caught up on House of the Dragon yet. And it's interesting because for me, I'm saying, no, this is great. This is great. What's the situation? I want to just again get into kind of, because again, a lot of people, even people who other people who are kind of recording this show are very similar, and they just haven't got a chance to catch up. What are your thoughts, and what's kind of what do you think the reason is behind that? Are you just not into the show? Is it not capturing you? What's going on there?
It's kind of hard for me to nail down one element. Like it is, and I think you have to talk about this in context of Game of Thrones as well. Like Game of Thrones, to me, and I think in general in culture, felt like the last appointment viewing drama that we were all in on. And I think, obviously streaming kind of existed around that time, but it was in its infancy, like when Game of Thrones started, whereas by the time it ended, it was like the whole global conversation, but it felt like, yeah, you had to watch it at the time. Whereas now there's all half the time you don't even know when a show starts anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas with Game of Thrones, it was like everyone knew when it was on. And that kind of led to a thing where you had to be up to date to watch it. And I don't think it started as that, incidentally. I think like the first season of Game of Thrones, I remember watching it week to week as it aired. And I was freaking out that they chopped off Ned Stark's head. And everyone was like, what are you talking about? I literally, I can dig up my Facebook post just being like, is anybody watching Game of Thrones? Oh my God, the twist. But House of the Dragon, I think it's a couple of things for me. And I did start watching with everybody else when it started in 2022 now, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I got to about the halfway point, and then I just fell up and told myself I'd catch up and haven't. And I am rewatching it to try and kind of get up to date, because I was like, I'll watch season 1 when season 2 comes out. And I still haven't watched another episode of it in my rewatch in a month either. And I only got up to about episode 3, and episode 3 was a banger, to be fair, but and I don't know what it is. I think maybe there's a certain... When it started, there was the cynical side of me, because as much as I love movies and TV and media, I'm always skeptical of everything someone tries to sell me. I'm the biggest skeptic, cynic going. So I was like, is this a story worth telling? Or is it just, we need the new Game of Thrones at HBO. We need to keep this cow milked, And a part of me is kind of skeptical that it is a story worth telling. To be honest, and I again, just as I said, I have never gone past episode 5. So if I say something here that's changed in subsequent episodes and seasons, that's fine. But to me, like it's an inherently less interesting show than Game of Thrones. Right. Like with Game of Thrones, it was literally like, look at all these families in all these different worlds competing for this one throne. And who was the valid claim, who we want to win. There was characters that you could root for. There was characters that you hated. There was characters that were kind of, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this character. And eventually it would be very clear when they probably, throw someone out a window or whatever. But the problem with House of the Dragon for me is like, it's like if someone gave you all these toys to play with for 8 years and you kind of got sick of it by the end of year 8. And then they came back a couple of years later and gave you one toy from the toy box and was like, hey, play with this. And you're like, what about all the other stuff in the toy box? They're like, no, you enjoyed this toy. And I'm like, yeah, but what about all the other toys? What about, And I think what I mean by that is that when it's just a story of a family succession onto the throne, I just didn't find it as interesting. I thought like the characters in this, at least from the first few episodes, I didn't care about any of them. I thought they were mostly bad people, to be honest. And there was some characters that were more positive and good than others, but it made it less interesting for me to find someone to root for. And I also think like I don't know, is it episode 5 where the time jump is? I found the time jump so jarring, and I knew it was coming because
there's a few. It's not the last time jump. There's a few.
I think the time jump was that I stopped at, possibly again I could be misremembering, was when they got rid of Millie Alcock.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of that was, and again, I knew time jump was going to come. I knew there was multiple time jumps throughout. And I think to me, it made the sense of urgency in the story feel less important. Number one. And I also, I know it's the same character. It just doesn't feel like it though. When there is such a big time jump. So that kind of put me off it as well. And I think also it felt like there was lots of elements where I was like, oh, well, I know where that's going to go. And I don't know. And here's the last thing I'll say on this. And maybe this is a dumb point to say. And again, maybe this will color everything I said and take every bit of.
Say space. Yeah,
I think I'm going to say this, and then they'll be like, well, that takes the water out of every argument you made there. And I'm going to start with, like, I don't know if you remember this. One of the big marketing hooks and one of the things people kept saying when Game of Thrones was out, it's like, oh, it's fantasy for people who don't like fantasy, which is kind of bollocks, but also a great marketing hook because it's taken all the people who think swords, sandals, and God knows what else, and watch it, and then they're like, oh, I like fantasy. A part of me wonders if I actually do like fantasy. Like, look, I love Lord of the Rings. I love Game of Thrones, but like those are like great. It'd be like showing someone The Dark Knight and then being like, wow, all superhero movies are like this, and it's like, okay, let's throw on Batman and Robin. It's and I do like it, but I think this hems a lot closer to what I think of when I think of traditional fantasy as a genre. It's like, who's going to take the throne, and there's backstabbing in this family, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I got what I wanted out of Game of Thrones, so I feel like that urgency to get into House of Dragon isn't there. And I would say I want to stick with it, and I am going to stick with it now that I have the bear and the boys done. I'm going to try launch back into it, and hopefully I'll change my mind. But I don't know. I think there's a certain part of the population, and I've known other people that kind of, when I've said these points, and I think when I quit House of the Dragon the first time, I think I was a lot more indignant and clear on my points, and I think people were like, actually, that's a good point, yeah. And I think a lot of people have kind of been like a case of, I've been there, done that. I don't know if I necessarily, maybe I'm not the voice of the masses here, but I'm sure there's a few people that kind of feel the same way as me to a certain degree.
I don't think you're wrong. And I think I really hear that point about fantasy for people who don't like fantasy, and what happens when it's like, no, it's just fantasy now. You like fantasy because you watch Game of Thrones, and it's like, well, I didn't, and you sold me on that. So I really hear that point. It's interesting. What I'd say is, because I wanted to hear it based off someone who hasn't seen this season, I think they made a faux pas, and you can't do this. But House of the Dragon Season 1 almost should have been called House of the Dragon Season 0 or House of the Dragon Prologue, because that's what it is. It's a prologue, you know what I mean? And it's setting up the characters so that you understand the decisions they make. And Season 2 actually gets into it. And Season 2 is like, oh, this is Game of Thrones. This is Game of Thrones, except we've gone back in time. Like, it's very much like in the moment. These are the characters we're dealing with, and this is the stuff that's happening. I'd like to hear, and again, I get it though, and I think a lot of people feel the same. If you do catch up, I'd like to hear. Maybe we'll like check in on it in like May at the movies 2026 or something. But like at this rate, but like if you do catch up, I'd love to hear if you still feel the same, because I think season two has won a lot of people who are watching back over where they're like, yes, yes, you're doing the show that I wanted you to do. And they kind of got that Game of Thrones vibe back, but I don't think they've caught the population with that, or at least the masses that would have all watch Game of Thrones, because I think there's a lot of people like yourself where it's like, I'm the same. Like I'll watch a show which is like, this isn't my usual drama, you know this, but I'll give it a go, and or genre, and but I'll give it a go. And I think then when I've watched it, I'm like, well, I'm not going to watch every show in this genre now. This was the anime show that I was going to watch because I heard it was the ultimate anime show, you know. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I hear that, and it'd be interesting. I'd love to check back in, like if you do get to where we are now and see if it's changed your mind. I would encourage people and recommend them, but also respectfully and understanding that view as well. You can see here that I'm wearing my original beef top to this, even though we are discussing the boys. The reason for it is one, I don't have boys clothing, and two,
I do.
I there you go, nice. Well, we're covered. We're covered either
We're
way.
covered.
But I forgot to wear it when we covered the beef, or the bear. So I do want to check in with you as well, and we'll do this non-spoiler. So don't worry if you haven't seen the Bear season three and you want to keep it free of spoilers. I just want to get high level thoughts on season three, because I know obviously you have watched that, but we were talking House of the Dragon at the same time, and we don't want to spoil it for you. Is the main reason. We want to keep it. We want to keep the shock shocking. But what were your thoughts on season three of the Bear?
That was very disappointing.
Mm.
I I think this is kind of it. It was like people are really tearing into it, and I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but I also don't think it's as good as people are kind of defending it as. I found it a very disjointed season, and I will say, like, I think some people are looking back at like like season two of The Bear. I thought was amazing,
Yeah.
but watching it, I did kind of get the sense a couple of times where I'm like, this doesn't really feel like it's building anywhere. It felt a bit disconnected, but by the end
Mm.
of it, it felt like it did that. I feel like this season was that disconnected, and then it didn't pay off. And now, granted, and I think this is worth knowing going into it. It's not a spoiler, but it's worth knowing that this season does kind of end on a to be continued.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
I think that is worth knowing going into it, because it feels like they've thrown a lot into the air, and some of it feels like it's been in the air for a whole year now since the end of season two, and it's just kind of like, yeah, keep it up there. We'll deal with that in season four, and I kind of find that very frustrating. I think even from like episode one though, there was trouble afoot. Like the first
Mm.
episode, there's no narrative progression, really, and I think that was a problem in the last season a little bit, but I think in this season that was the overlying problem in general. It didn't feel like the story was moved forward a lot. I heard an interview with the head of FX, John Landgraf, I think his name is, and he was saying like, oh, you know, I think he was talking about actually for season four, the scheduling of that, because there was rumors that they'd film them back to back, and they've
Yeah.
kind of been very tight lipped about what that means, because they were like, it's partly true. So I think it seems like they filmed parts of it maybe.
Yeah.
But he said it's like it's so hard to schedule this cast now. He was like, you know, we started out with TV stars and now we're dealing with movie stars.
Mm.
I think that shows. The skeptic in me, which as we said is just me. It's not in me. I am a skeptic. My larger personality. I think a lot of this was written to accommodate actor schedules. It feels like the kind of drama that we started with of all these people trying to fight in the kitchen to make it work isn't really there anymore for large parts of the season. It feels like, hey, what's this character doing? Hey, what's this character? Like the actual kind of community element of this show feels like it kind of vanished this year. And when it was there, it worked. And I think what is frustrating about the way this episode is the kind of order of the episodes is that it feels like it's going nowhere at first. Then you get an episode where it's like, oh, it's getting back on track. Then it kind of gets sidelined again. And then towards the end, it's like, okay, let's get back to that show you love, and then it ends. You're like, oh man.
Mm.
Like it doesn't like I think the clear story of each season also was there the whole time. Like the first one was, oh, how are we going to, do something with this restaurant? Who do you want to be? Blah, blah, blah. Season 2 was, okay, let's turn it into this restaurant, the opening of the restaurant. Season 3, the narrative story was like, wasn't there for a while. And there is a kind of a story to it that I'm not forgetting it. I'm just not saying it for spoiler reasons. But it feels like it's put there and then forgotten about and then brought up towards the end of the season. And then we don't get any resolution there. So I thought it was very, very frustrating. And I don't think it's a case. I've seen some people say like almost celebrating online, being like, "Oh, that's right. It's always been bad. You're just now realizing." I don't think that's the case. It's not a case. Like, now I also think it's ridiculous. That's like the most Emmy-nominated comedy ever, as we had to think of
like this was one
ridiculous.
of those where like when it got, I think it's 23, and I think only Shogun surpassed it. And Shogun, I've got no qualms with that getting the Emmy love that it did, but it felt like it had been pre-nominated. I felt like the people had got their ballot in before they watched season 3 because they're like, it's the Bear. Like whatever I put here, it's gonna work, and then it awkwardly didn't.
I think it. I can't even remember. Yeah, it must have been was it season 3 or season 2 was nominated? I don't know, but it's like it has more. I think it passed 30 Rock in the most nominations for a comedy either, and I'm like, The Bear is a comedy, I guess. Like, I mean, I get more laughs out of one episode of 30 Rock than a whole season of The Bear. Probably, I can't remember laughing that much at all in this season. But there were the character focused episodes. One in particular I thought was really good. That I'm not going to say. I think it was episode 6.
You can say the character is based on.
It focuses on the character of Tina. And I liked that episode. But again, I'm like, what? Like, aside from giving us more depth on that character, who is it feels like a fairly tertiary character in the cast anyway. What was the purpose of it? And I feel like with an episode like, say, like Forks in season 2. In some ways, that's a diversion from what we're doing, but it felt like that all paid off in the episodes that followed that.
That explained everything we needed to know.
Yeah.
Forks explained every decision a character had made up to that point. It rounded out Carmy. It rounded out, and then that set up kind of the finale, and where Carmy ended season 2 on. It's like, that's why. That's exactly why. Yeah. And I understand him up to this point now. And now I understand where he's going and why he makes the decisions he does, which is why I think a lot. Sorry, I'm thinking of Fishes. I'm getting that mixed up with Forks. But they did the same. Forks did the same for Richie, and like, it's like, right, you've now centered this character. I know why he's messy. I know why I feel like I understand all of these characters and why they're doing it, and that's why they were powerful. But I agree. The Tina episode, I can't think of one thing Tina did besides made one dish. in the rest of season 3. So I'm like, yeah, I get it. My friend had a similar issue, and they actually pointed out to me there's 2 really character-based episodes. One's on Tina, and there's one where it's a mother-daughter situation. And if you watch season 2, you know who I'm talking about, but I won't get into it anymore. In multiple ways, actually. But there's 2, and my friend spoke to me afterwards, having watched it a couple of weeks after it released, and said to me, it's like, those are the 2 episodes I didn't understand and I didn't like. And I'm like, they're the best episodes. And I'm like, but I also get it, because it's like, if the season doesn't have any forward momentum, it's just a complete diversion. And it's like, I'm trying to wait for the season to make a point here. And then you're just taking me on this random tangent, which is good, but like, what's it building towards? It never does build towards anything, because after those 2 character episodes, we barely see the characters in it anymore. They're not in the end game, like, so it's I agree with that.
But I think that's exactly what you said there. Is those are the 2 best episodes, and that they're the best episodes because there's no real arc. They're self kind of contained, and that's kind of the problem with this season. It felt very unclear of what they were doing or what they were trying to do. Like, we get some resolution for Carmy. Has like a big moment later on in the season where he kind of confronts something from his past, and it was just like, oh, that's what I expected to happen.
Exactly what you expect.
Yeah. And I'm like, I guess, was this meant to be some big revelation or moment? And I'm like, well, not really. And like, I think again, it'll be interesting looking back at this season after season 4. Maybe after, I don't know how much longer the show can feasibly go, to be honest. I think season 4 could be an ending, or maybe a 5th season that's a bridge. I don't know, but like, it'll be interesting looking back at this season in retrospect, because I'm already seeing people say like, yeah, you could probably skip big parts of the season. And so far, I'm kind of like, yeah, like I
Mm.
don't think I'll ever watch season 3, episode 1 again. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a need,
That, like, yeah,
you know.
exactly. Especially if you're watching in a binge, you're like, it's basically a recap episode. So you're like, I've just
Yeah.
watched all of that, so I understand all the points. So yeah, no, that's a very good point. I have to say, the further I get away from it, the more I like it, because when we reviewed it
Mm.
on this show, we weren't slating it, but we were very tepid on it. And I think we were fair, and I stand over much of what we said. But the more I've gotten away from it, and the more it's settled with me, and the more I've kind of got my head around the stories they're trying to tell. I have liked it more, and I probably will like it more in subsequent rewatches. But that is me having to fill in the blanks of, oh, they're telling this story and this character goes from here to here to here. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's me filling in the blanks that they're doing. And I think Kev, who reviewed it with me, if anyone wants to go back and listen, made a great point. And he said, I think this is one season split into two. And I think, like,
Yeah.
Hulu probably said, look, we've got a winner on our hands. Why not play it out? Because I think we are hurtling towards the end game. Because again, it's a very, and this is why I was a late arrival to the Bear, because I was like, how much drama can take place in just the kitchen? Do you know what I mean? And turns
Mm.
out, like, quite a lot on a day-to-day basis, but over a longer period of time, when you're trying to create long-lasting, like, poignant character arcs that'll stay with us, not a lot, because they're just people doing their jobs day to day, earning a living, and like us,
Yeah.
they're just normal people.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the show really work and hum and feel relatable on one level. But when you're trying to then tell this epic story, which it's trying to do because it's trying to validate its kind of position at the top of prestige TV, which is it has ascended to, that becomes difficult to do. And I think they have arcs that they're working towards. And I think if we'd have got this in its original inception as one season, and again, I'm speculating here that it's one season separated into two, but I feel it would have made a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But I feel we've got a story half told, and that was frustrating to watch at times.
No. Yeah, I think you're like that theory is exactly what my theory was as well. As far as it being meant to have, I think it was meant to be when they were saying, "Did you film back and forth?" They were like, "Kinda." I'm pretty sure they basically just filmed a little bit of extra material to justify making 2 seasons out of a season that was meant to be one, and it kind of feels
Yeah.
like that.
It feels like a show that does a lot of improvising, because a lot of the acting is very natural at times. So I feel like they're just like, we're just going to keep the cameras rolling and keep having the banter and the slaggings and understand your characters. And I feel like that really worked in season 1 and season 2. But it felt like, particularly with a lot of the fact stuff here, and I love the facts, by the way. And there's one fact which is very divisive this year because it's a massive swing. If you haven't seen it, and a lot of people are saying, no, you took me totally out of it when that person. So I liked it. I was like, it's a bit stunt casty, but like
A little bit
I
sick
can
on
get
me.
into it. Yeah, yeah. Like they walk into the room and it's like, woo, yeah, but I felt like those scenes ran very long, and we got stuff where they might let a scene run for 10 minutes where the characters are improvising, having the back and forth. And in season 1 and season 2, we might have got 30 seconds of that improv, the absolute gem and the gold. But I feel like they gave us the full 10 minutes a lot in this, and it's like, stop, like,
Yeah.
just get to the point. But interesting times anyway, yeah. And we'll kind of touch back now. I did want to get your thoughts on it though. We're going to talk about The Boys from here on out, and guys, we are going to give you a spoiler warning, even though why should you need it? It's an episode recap. Obviously, we're going to be talking spoilers. So if you haven't watched the latest episode of The Boys, season 4 finale, go away, watch it, come back, and we'll talk about it all. We are, if you're watching on YouTube at the moment, you'll be able to see Tom in the background has some The Boys comics. We are, like, we may refer to them at some point. We don't want to take that off the table, but one thing I'll promise you is that we're not going to talk about anything that happens in the future past this storyline. Although The Boys, like I have to say every time, has deviated massively from the comics. But if we refer to the comics, we'll refer to something that, again, is non-spoiler to the plot that we have, and do it to kind of give you a bit more perspective or anything on the characters. We haven't had a chance to, because this is the first time you're on Dragon Boys of Summer. So before we get to the finale, I just wanted to check in on how are you feeling coming up to the finale about season 4 of The Boys, and then like we'll discuss kind of our overall season 4 reflections. But I just want to get kind of a quick lightning round oversight on how you were coming into this, because we were very mixed on this season
Hmm.
to this point.
Curious how they were going to kind of justify this season with the ending.
Mm.
That, like, I feel like episode 7, it was like, hey, it kind of feels like it's getting on track. So I'm like, okay, where has this all been building to? And that was kind of where I was at without going too in depth to it. Again, mixed thoughts on the season as a whole, but coming into season 4, I was more curious to see what they were actually going to do and make it feel like they could kind of pull it out of the bag a little bit.
Yeah.
As for whether they did that, I guess we'll get into that in a sec.
Okay, yes, let's do it. Let's talk about the finale then. And as we do, as always, we're going to recap you and put you back in the mindset of what exactly happened with our alternate recap of season 4 finale of The Boys. Again, that's the episode title. I imagine that changed quite quickly during the week because the Trump assassination attempts made this kind of awkward, but we'll get into how they managed to sell it anyway with our alt recap. And on VOT News, release the Feral Street cut is trending as Training A Train is cancelled while the Electoral College vote has the boys up against the clock to finish the virus. Butcher lays in bed on his last leg, succumbing to super cancer and calling Yui, telling him to honour his legacy by going to a Las Vegas strip club where you can eat steak, aka literally any Las Vegas strip club. Homelander finds Ryan's picture of Butcher and his mom and destroys the pube pad in rage, which causes Ryan to flee in fear into the waiting arms of Butcher and Mallory. Shifter Annie proposes to Yui after telling him the story of her grandfather's proposal, and they celebrate by making a story for their grandkids and sticking fingers up each other's bums before she goes to gloat to the original Annie while getting a recharge. Say what you want about Firecracker, but I'm not going to lie, I would watch the shit out of the Truth Bomb every week. This show is a hot mess. On this week's episode, Homelander outs Newman as a soup on live TV, causing her to call Yui to make a deal. Homelander calls on the 3 of the remaining members of the 7. They're basically like a 5 concert now these days, where you show up and only 2 of them are actually there because one's in prison and the other's working at Tesco. He calls them to Night of the Long Knives, half of what? Deep realizes that Ashley should be on there, so she panics and takes on V. Should have ran to Florence with A-Train when you had the chance of. Meanwhile, the Deep pulverizes underpaid writers, and Black Noir finally gets his murder boner from killing the wrong Ashley. In the presidential bunker, which has the slowest doors and longest passwords known to man, by the way, Yui realizes Annie is the shifter and not the good kind, and they have to rush Singer to safety. Fortunately, Annie freed herself in time to take out the shifter and insist Yui get tested for shifter syphilis. For once, Butcher is the voice of reason. It's his plan to play Connects 4 and gently break it to Brian that his dad, maybe Hitler, is better than Mallory's everything you know is a lie, you need to kill your father. Then yeah, maybe overwhelming for a teenager who had zero social contact with the outside world until like a year ago. So she's dead now and Ryan ran away. Operation Ryan not working left Butcher one choice: embrace his inner Kessler as he confronts the boys just as they're about to co-sign the deal with Newman, ripping her apart with his new half Groot, half Venom powers. Homelander is bereft in his ruined apartment as he sees the news of Newman's death when Sage shows up to reveal they'd actually won. Singer had been arrested after his Newman murder plot was revealed. Speaker of the House Calhoun was sworn in as his replacement and agreed to be Homelander's patsy. Martial law was declared with the Supes out to arrest enemies of the state. Speaking of the boys, they went on the run. Kate and Sam took out Frenchie and Kimiko, who was so beside herself she spoke. Love Sausage got revenge on longtime nemesis Mother's Milk. While Cindy stopped Yui and Annie's getaway, Yui was detained and Annie forced to fly off. Butcher drove into the night with Virus in hand and Kessler in the backseat as Firecracker promised to make America super again. But wait, there's more. As a post-credit scene showed, Calhoun informing Homelander that Soldier Boy, the most evil superhero to ever be named after a one-hit wonder Naughty's rapper, was still alive. And that was the season 4 finale. Name likely change due to current events of The Boys. Tom, let's get into it now. You've set us up perfectly. Again, a mixed season. Relied a lot on the finale to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Did this work for you?
As a standalone episode, I'm not sure. But as kind of set up for the next season, definitely yes.
Okay.
It felt like a lot of the stuff here was like, because season 5 is going to be crazy. I felt like there was a few things that they kind of put off until next season. For me, like I feel like we didn't get any real answer about what's going to go on with A Train or any of this thing. Soldier Boy has always been kind of one of those like Chekhov's gun things since they introduced him. It was like, oh, when's he going to come back now? Any minute. So it feels like a lot of setup for season 5, and that's odd because it feels like season 4. I don't think season 4 necessarily was that for a lot of the season, but I think by the end of the season, it certainly felt that way. I mean, like the last 10-15 minutes of a montage of this to Heart Shaped Box by Nirvana felt like that moved the plot forward more than any of the rest of season 4 for me. As an episode, I thought it was decent. I thought there was some enjoyable stuff to it, some kind of good twists. I think there was still some of the flaws that have been kind of inherent throughout this whole season, though. For me, I think the season really only kind of came alive in episode 7 and 8, really. I think there was some good stuff before that, but it was kind of isolated, whereas I think episode 7 and 8 are really where it started playing ball for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's like for me, I'm going to be clear. I loved this episode. It was what I'd been waiting for. And from both a plot standpoint and just everything else, I've been like, right, okay. But at the same time, is it one of the greatest episodes of The Boys that blow me away? Am I like throw all the Emmys at this one episode? No, like it was just an episode of The Boys. But for episodes 1 to 5, I'll say the Tech Night episode. I think that was episode 6. I think that was I was very high on that episode and quite enjoyed it. So I thought episode 6, 7, 8 kind of pulled it back, but they just kind of gave us The Boys. It is the show that we remember now. Whereas episodes 1 to 5 felt like we got glimpses of that and moments, and there was some fun stuff. And if you were, again, it's the standards you bring to it, and I think The Bear is kind of similar to this. I think you could say if The Bear gets nominated for, we spoke about there, a lot of comedy awards and the Emmys, and it's not really a comedy, it's trying to be more a prestige drama with a lot of funny elements, but I think, if it embraced the fact that it was a comedy and just played in that sandbox, then you'd be like, that's a great show. It's punching. The Boys, if it was a Marvel TV show, I'd be like, this is a great Marvel TV show on Disney Plus, But the problem is The Boys has kind of threatened to be among the best TV shows of this generation at times. And we've the heights we've kind of felt, oh, this is phenomenal. This is changing the game in many ways, and on the standards that we judged The Boys, the TV show that they presented us, this was not up to scratch the season. And the last 3 episodes were, for me, the only episodes that kind of seemed familiar with the standards we come to expect it. But I'm not going to complain because the episode I saw, I believe, maintained within that. It pissed me off that, and this wasn't to do with the episode, but I do want to mention it, that they felt they had to put a statement out beforehand in light of the Trump assassination attempt, and they had to kind of temper this to the point that I do believe, like, I don't think they've ever called a season finale the season finale and not had an episode title. I think that had to be changed because whatever it was originally was probably insensitive.
It was originally, I have the original title if you want to hear it.
Go for it.
Assassination Run.
That'll do it. So I get it, but like I also don't think, like, they had to explain in the statement, they're like, this was recorded in 2023. We're not attempting to, and it's like stupid. And like, again, I'm like, nobody on the planet believes that you rushed to record all of this show, got it done in 3 days, edited, produced it, wrote it, acted it, directed it. Like, nobody believes that. Everyone gets how TV works. And then I'm like, no, America, no, they can be very stupid. Again, they saw what happened on Saturday as a massive win for Trump somehow. Like, that's who you're dealing with. So again, that kind of pissed me off and kind of tempered me. I doubt much changes were made because I don't think there's time in TV land. I'd say they had to have all this submitted to Prime Video by the time the season aired. So they could probably do a couple ninja edits of, like, quotes that maybe would have fell flat. It is interesting because there wasn't, apart from one scene, and even then, that wasn't really an assassination in the way we traditionally kind of see assassinations. Like, I don't see how that would have played as insensitive beyond they're trying to kill the president. So again, like, it's an interesting one. That element pissed me off. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. for me, what I liked about this, and we'll get to this later, is more like what it set up and now how it made me feel about the show. And finally, the stakes feel real. You know, the gloves are off with this because we've had 4 seasons now of Homelander being in a room with the heroes and for some reason not killing them despite having no reason not to and having to come up with excuses and so on. And we understand why that works because we get it. It's a TV show. You need the main characters. If you killed everyone off, there's no show, and we quite enjoy watching it, so we forgive it. But it feels good now to finally arrive at a stage where we're like, now it's real. Now we get to kind of know how this will play out, and again, all the character beats are kind of falling in line with that. I want to get into it kind of beat by beat or character by character, but I also, the ending of the show kind of threw off a lot of these character beats. So we will discuss the ending separately, and I want to kind of just discuss what happened, I suppose, up to that. And we'll start with Hughie and Annie. Obviously, Hughie started this. I don't know. I remember TMI story time. I was with a girl who it ended badly, and she cheated. Okay, so I could just get into it. Okay, and at one stage she was like, I got really drunk and blah 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 blah, and like I didn't even realize I was cheating, and I was just that drunk and blah, and making all the excuses under the book. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but no. If someone you're kissing isn't the person that you're used to kissing, unless you just do it all the time, you know what I mean? So that undermines that story. And that's kind of how I felt with Hughie and Annie. I'm like, like, I don't care how much the shifter is in Annie's head. She doesn't know how to fuck the way Annie fucks. She doesn't know how to kiss the way Annie kisses. So there was a part of that with me, but I enjoyed a lot of this in the season where I started this season going, I don't mind if Hughie dies. I'd be okay if they Ned Starked him. I'm now back on the Hughie and Annie train based off this. What did you think about kind of the arc that they went to, the kind of, Annie coming back, killing the shifter? It seems like all's well with the two of them before obviously we get to the end. And what were your thoughts on kind of Hughie and Annie's arc?
I didn't really care for their story at all this season. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a case of like, there's when characters are kind of shipped together and then they get together and it's like, oh, now what? Oh, now they're just together, I guess. I don't know. Like relationship drama stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. You don't want to do will they, won't they? You don't want to do Ross and Rachel. But there's a reason that people do that so often because it gives it like if you're together, it's just like, oh, you're just together. That's boring.
There's a reason why Ross and Rachel break up like 3 times in the show. It's because we need the chase back.
Yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, I didn't really care for their story all that much this season. I thought the shapeshifter thing I did feel like it kind of came out of nowhere, and they just did it so they'd have a reason for it. It's like, that's right, now all our problems are solved. We're a secure couple again at the end, and you're like, is that the lesson I should be taking out of that? I don't know. Which also, I think, by the way, shift is Irish slang for kiss as well. So the shapeshifter is perfect. The shapeshifter shifter.
I've had a few. I've had a few weirdly shapeshifters in my time.
Yeah. Look, we've all been there. We've all had those days and nights, But I don't know. I feel Hughie, poor Hughie. Like they just. What did Jack Quaid do to the writers of this show? Like they must really hate him or something. Like it was just so miserable. It feels like the whole season they just tortured him and made him lose everything, and I don't know why. I kind of was like, oh well, is this going to lead to something? Like, is it going to lead to him being a bit more? I don't know. Assertive? Is it going to lead to him being a bit more whatever? Which would be kind of a weird lesson to be like, yeah. You lost your dad and you got sexually assaulted loads of times, but thank God you're more assertive.
He got sexually assaulted so much for one person in one season of telly.
To the point where I'm like, are they taking it as a joke? Is it meant to be like a running joke? Which it's not funny if it is. It's kind of awkward and uncomfortable. So yeah, I don't know, and I really liked the Hughie character before. And I don't know. I feel like a problem with this season in general was, and again, there was parts of this in the earlier seasons as well. And I do think like a lot of the people are talking about season 4 is where it dropped the ball. I think those cracks were there at the end of season 3, to be honest. Because I didn't watch season 3 week to week. I watched it all in one kind of binge when it all came out. And I think by the end of season 3, I was like, this show is starting to move away from what the show felt like initially. And I think here we have that as well, where it feels like there's not a lot of moments where it feels like the boys are the boys, like one kind of unit working together. And I feel like with the case of Huey, it almost feels like he I don't know what his purpose is anymore. And I don't know, like he now they just turned him into this down on his luck character constantly, and I feel like there is an element to that. Like it feels like they've kind of flanderized his character a little bit, from what we got in the first or second season, you know.
Yeah.
Now he's just like down on his luck, like oh shucks, nothing ever goes right for poor Huey. But to do that in a show as dark and as extreme as The Boys means that inevitably he's going to lose all the people he loves. He's going to get sexually assaulted. He's going to have everything bad happen to him, and that's not really a character that I like seeing that done to, and it's also not a character it's not really very interesting for the character. So I don't know, and Starlight is a character where again it feels like they've done as much as they can kind of do with that character at this point. I feel like, so I don't know. I feel like they kind of just put them into a box together in a relationship because they have nothing else to do with these characters right now. It feels like, so I found it frustrating, to be honest. Which I don't know.
I'm not as out in them as maybe you are, but I do feel their individual arcs are almost more compelling than their arc together. You know, I feel like that's just kind of something that's there and they have to like kind of just refer to and deal with at times. This was one of the stronger episodes for them as a couple, though. I felt there was a lot there. Like there's the drama of Yui having unknowingly cheated and proposed to this person, escalated their relationship and so on. I know he didn't propose, but that's not how it looked to Annie at the end of it. There's a couple of missteps. Like last week when Mother's Milk was kind of like, look, I'm out. This is obviously playing into my health and I need to quit. I'm like, why do you make Butcher the leader of the boys? I felt like that was the time to go, Yui, you're up. You know what I mean? Because that makes sense. It's like you can actually see it from both sides. You know what I mean? You're actually the calm head, and you've grown and you've progressed as a character. There is some good progression of Yui as a character. Like, for example, I like the conversation you had with Butcher, and this was very soft strokes, and there was a lot of good soft strokes character work done on this.
I enjoyed that part, yeah.
I like the discussion they had and the subtle progression Yui showed, where initially he's like, no, you've got to fight, and he's kind of clinging onto a person, but then Butcher says no, and you can kind of, even though he's on the other side of a phone, you can hear the wheels turning in his head, and he's like, okay, I'll go to the strip club, you know, and he's letting go, and that's something that, again, they didn't make a song and dance about it, but I like that even more because it's just like, okay, the character's learning, and we can see that development there. I'm raging that not that they got rid of the shifter. It's not that I liked this character so much, but I liked the character's power set. I loved the scene, and I love shows like, you can think of Piper in Orange is the New Black, Leslie Knope in Parks and Recreation. I like when shows deconstruct the typical all-American, usually blonde, and always in this case blonde, blue eyes, beautiful kind of heroine at the story of it, where it's like, it's not all about you. I like that kind of. And I like that element to the shifter's powers as well. I'd like to see them be like maybe a series villain in like a season of Gen V, because I think like that's where the boys works best, where it's kind of they hold the mirror up to society in a way, you know what I mean? And it works as a satire, not a political satire. I don't want to see it be, you know, playing out the Donald Trump. And again, like the reason
might be a bit too late for that. I think the both of them have on that this season.
But I'm actually not in that. I'm actually, they're just the right side of it for me now, and we'll get to that as we go. But I liked that component of it where she's holding the mirror up to Annie and saying, you're not perfect, you're not this. And I like the fact that she's like, I'm a fucking sociopath, but because I'm a sociopath, I can see things clearly. I'm in your head and I'm in people's head. And I'd like to see her do that with multiple characters. I wish we got more of that, because I felt that was really effective in kind of fleshing out Annie. And I do like that side of Annie, who has been deconstructed from the kind of the woke queen that she walked into the series as. And that worked for her to be that in season 3. It kind of created the Civil War mentality that we started season 4 on. But I also like, you know, fallen hero has to find herself and rebuild. And I think she's on a strong arc as well. And I'm happy, you know, we won't get into what happened at the end. But I'm happy the two of them are separate now, and I hope, get them back together at the end, have them hug and be whatever, if they make it to the end. But I don't feel like they need to be on a joint arc anymore, and I'm kind of glad that's over. Although I will say, and then this is another kind of reflection of my life. But the scene where Annie turned around to Yui, and said, "You're getting tested for everything," and I'm like, he got away with it. She plans on having sex with him again, and I really like the fact that Yui acknowledged that. Was like, yes,
Yeah.
he's seeing the 3D board there. He's like, I feel I just got shouted at, but the news is actually quite good for me because she plans on having sex with me again. And that's like things only a man can hear, you know what I mean? But interesting stuff. Another love story that I feel is a bit more will they, won't they? But for me, kind of went off tracks in this. But again, materially, they got us back to, I guess, where I wanted them to be. And I want to check in on how you felt about all this. Frenchie and Kimiko. For me, this went totally off the rails. And this is probably the relationship and the characters I care most about in this show. In spite of myself, they've just done really good jobs with them. They're just really well fleshed out characters. What were your thoughts on how they got back together? They kissed finally for the first time. They acknowledged they're romantic. They're going forward, and then we'll get to kind of what happens at the very end. But without getting to that, what were your thoughts on kind of them finally getting it together and the arc that they've been on and that paying off?
Yeah, I thought their kind of drama this season was a little bit shite. Like at some point, like it's okay to let your characters be happy together if fans want to see that. And I feel like they kind of just threw a lot of spanners in the works here. I don't think, and I would say Frenchie more than Kimiko. Like Frenchie's story in this season just did nothing for me.
No,
it felt like just pointless drama that didn't really go anywhere. I think there is an element to that character that worked this season. As far as kind of a further analysis of that character, that I think Justice mentioned that I'm sure you play over the course of the show. But I feel like they really just created drama to keep them apart, to give them something to do this season. And I think it felt very transparent that they didn't really know what to do with these characters. Now, I do think like the Kimiko part of it was interesting. Like I thought getting kind of her perspective of the situation and her kind of playing almost like a therapist role, I thought that was quite interesting because it gave us moments to see her own trauma, which I found very interesting, and that insight into that character I thought worked quite well. And I enjoyed, kind of learning why she doesn't speak, and I thought that was a really strong character element. And again, probably put that character in a new light in general and going forward. But aside from that, like anytime their story kind of came up, I was like, oh, it was like I probably would have taken my eye off television if I didn't have to read the subtitles. Like it didn't feel like it added anything to the larger dynamic of the show. It didn't feel like it added anything to the storyline. Like the big revelation was that, oh, that's right, Frenchie just turned himself in, and then he's just back the next episode anyway. It's like, okay, that was okay, so that was totally pointless. That was just that was, I just didn't get it. I didn't really know what they were going for with it, aside from just we need to fill time in the show and we want to do something with these characters, but we're not entirely sure what.
Yeah, I've been a big critic of this arc since day one, of this season. But you know what? I'm kind of coming around to it now, okay? And I get it a bit more. I don't like how we got here, but I feel like if you put the character arcs, and there's a phrase in kind of pop psychology, you only accept the love you feel you deserve, and that's a very real thing, and the characters are true to life in that sense, and I appreciate and respect that. And I feel that's obviously what they were going for here. They couldn't love each other until they decided to love themselves. And to do that, they had to confront who they actually were and what they'd been through. So that worked for me. That's a good story worth telling. But how they told it and the narrative elements they chose and the decisions they made to get there didn't work for me. Like Kimiko at the start of it just turning around and going, oh no, we're just friends. And then at the end of it going, oh no, that was a lie. I'm like, that's cheap. There's
Mm.
better ways of doing that. Think you need to just go back into the writer's room and have an hour meeting about that exactly. How do we do this in a clever way? But for me, it worked in the end. Like they, as characters, it made sense for them to feel that way, and they needed to go through a journey to do it. I just didn't necessarily enjoy being on that journey with them, particularly the prison scene and so on. Um, and I do want to kind of touch on something as well. We're not going to discuss the full ending, but I think it's very prescient to kind of get into how Frenchie and Kamiko's story ended, because this is obviously so important for two characters. Like, first off, you had Kate come in and transfix. We didn't hear what she said and what the exact orders are, but again, we're pretty much just do what I tell you. And Frenchie goes off willingly with her in the end, and Kimiko is held by Sam, and we hear Kimiko speak for the first time, and she yells, "No, no, no!" Really powerful moment. And really devastating as well, because everything we know about Kamiko's or Kate's powers, and even Sam is testament to this in that, is that they're not reversible, or we don't know if they're reversible. There's never been evidence of this. They never found her brother. If you watch Gen V, and that's how she
I
learned she
have
had
not
her
watched
powers.
Envy.
Oh, you need to watch Gen
So
V, man.
yeah, I know now that I've watched this, I'm
Oh,
like, I want to watch Envy, but
this
this
must have
is
been
like
so confusing.
I
Yeah.
was I was like, what she did? Oh, I was like, okay, I kind of think I get it. But it was weird because like that was I saw so many people be like, do you need to watch Envy for this? And everyone's like, no, no, no. And then
Oh,
it
you
was just like
do. Oh, yeah, yeah, you do. And you need to watch the essay. It's brilliant. It is literally the boys. The like it is. You look at it and you're like, it's a high school drama, and it very much is. Like, it feels like on one hand, like you're watching an old school kind of Melrose Place type, or the OC, but like then it is very much the boys, and it has all the elements that you like about the boys, and it feels fresh, and the characters are really good, and the story's really well thought through. Definitely recommend watching Gen V, if only to make sense of what happened here. So for those who haven't watched Gen V, like Tom, Kate's power is that if she touches you, she'll whisper into your ear, and you will do what she says. And you are basically her slave then from there on. And that's what happened with Frenchie. So that scene must have made no sense until right now.
well, I kind of just assumed like because all the characters in this are often based on archetypes. I was just like, she's Scarlet Witch kind of type. I was like, cool.
Yeah, yeah, to a point. Yeah, yeah, to a point, but very in that one specific way. Like, she doesn't really
Okay.
have anything else. But that's, again, like, Sam is someone, he goes on a whole arc, but Sam is someone who's under her power now. Like, she's told him, don't feel anything, just go with your anger and kind of just embrace the dark side almost.
Mhm.
So that's who they are. And they're Gen V cameos. But the thing is, with those powers, we've never seen them reversed. We've never seen anyone go back on it, and that is like, now look, let's be real here. It's TV. This is a love story. I don't know if the two of them are making it to the end of this show. There could be a heartbreaking death, but there will be a love finds a way. We can kind of bank on that at some stage in the show, whether it's tragic or whether it's a happy ending for these two. That is still very much up for debate. Um, but what I loved about how this made sense and what it did was the character elements. And again, you mentioned it there, but in the Dragon Boys of Summer kind of group chat that we have, where we kind of make plans for the show and discuss as we go on, friend of the show and oft voicey contributor, the one and only Justy, got on and made an excellent point that I had to share with you guys on this, because it really sums up how much this hit Frenchie as a character. So we're going to go ahead and check in with Justy on his thoughts on this.
Yeah, completely agree. But here's the kicker with Frenchie, and it's the kind of uh it's his true line is that he always needs a master, if you know what I mean. Like he's always under somebody's spell, whether it be Butcher or that Russian one. Like the stuff that he's done and he feels guilty for, and technically he done it himself, but he was under the influence and under power from somebody else. Even drugs, like he's always been under someone else's influence. And at the end of the season, you kind of felt like he broke out and was himself. He was able to forgive himself. Him and Kamiko even had that chat about it. It's hard to forgive yourself, but they became those kindred spirits in that fact that they were like, maybe we can move on and forgive ourselves. And they were just about to head off on their journey, and then boom, it it's not even a figurative thing anymore. He's literally under somebody's spell, and uh, and that's what's separating him from Kamiko now.
Powerful. The only way he would be under anyone's spell now that he's forgiven himself is if it's actually under a spell. Devastating. And that to me is like the end justifies the means here. This was a poorly told story, but it was a story nonetheless. It had a start, middle, and end, and the characters' decisions made sense based on kind of where we ended up. And I'm okay that we got here in the end because the ending is really powerful. Do you know what it is? It is if this was a wrestling storyline, it is one where the video package looks really good and the match is really good and the finish is exactly what you wanted the finish to be. It's Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30. If you watch that every week on Raw, it got a bit boring, it got a bit repetitive, but fuck me, the payoff was brilliant. You know what I mean? And that's what this was. The payoff made sense, and that's where you needed it. But they had to fill in a weekly TV show and have intersections. And those intersections didn't work, but where we got, I feel, worked for me. I don't know. That sounds fair to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, again, I do like the way it ended with them because I think it sets up some interesting possibilities of where it goes. And again, I think we all want that moment where love will persevere between them. Again, the road to get there was kind of rocky. In fact, I'm wondering even like if them kind of making up as they did before that was the best call. Maybe it would have been even better if he was under the spell and they hadn't kind of made up and realized their love for each other. And then it's Kimiko realizing how much she loves him now that she can't get to him. And then eventually when they get together, it's even more sweet. I don't know. But then again, I'm not a writer, so I just shit on things. I just shit on things by other writers.
I'm okay. I'll give the writers credit on this one. I think it was better to get it for a moment, watch them about to sail into the sunset, and then rip that away from us. And then again, it's the literal spell that he's under now that he can't be put under anyone else's spell. It is literally the only way. Watch Gambino. Seriously, man. I cannot recommend it enough. I don't think there's anything else. No, you're okay. You're good. You're good for everything else here. Ryan and Butcher, obviously, and rest in peace to Mallory here too, who was kind of caught in the crossfire of this plan gone wrong, which obviously led to Butcher's revelation. I want to get onto where Butcher went from this, but I want to discuss this kind of scene and this plan and kind of Butcher's arc, kind of at least in the first kind of 3/4 of the episode. What were your thoughts on all of this?
I mean, well, first of all, Butcher and Mallory need to work on their fucking bedside manner. Jesus Christ. Yeah, like, oh, no, the reason you're here, by the way, is here's all the horrible things that happen. Don't freak out. We're just going to lock you in this room with a load of gas. What? Like, Jesus. Really bad plan. Yeah, I think, like, the Butcher Ryan stuff has been interesting this season. And I don't, like, it kind of comes into a certain weird disconnect I think the season has had as well, which is that it feels like Homelander has felt very separate to the story a lot. It feels like he's often off to the side. Like we did get the scene early on in the season where it was Homelander, Butcher, and Ryan in the kitchen talking. That felt a very normal scene. And I kind of feel like we needed a little bit more of that this time because it felt very disconnected sometimes. I felt like Ryan was kind of the connective tissue. I don't know if the other actors don't want to hang around Anthony Starr. there was a rumor that is the case. But outside of that, Butcher this season, again, I feel like it was kind of not lazy storytelling, but it was kind of like he's on this ticking clock. He's going to die. He's going to die. He's going to die. Never mind. He's got superpowers. He became Venom. I wasn't really a fan of it. It just felt like they had this ticking clock element the whole time. I assumed they were just going to push that off to season 5, but it felt like there wasn't much else to him. This thing, it was kind of just a whole like we got to take down Homelander, and that's what the whole show was about anyway. But it felt like there wasn't really. I think, and I'm jumping around here from Butcher and going onto a problem with Homelander is they realize how popular that character is and how loved that character is. So they're kind of afraid to do much with him. I kind of feel like they like logically. I feel like by now the boy should either be dead or Homelander should be dead. And I know that if you get rid of one of those, you kind of change the whole dynamic of the show and possibly ruin it. But I kind of feel like the whole Butcher versus Homelander thing is just not really gone anywhere this season. It kind of felt like they both basically just built up the stakes, and on paper, what we before going ultimately to the ending, what we get is Homelander is in a position of power and Butcher has superpowers, which is exactly where we were at the end of the third season.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just don't feel like they have much to do with Butcher at the moment, aside from the inevitable clash with Homelander. So there was a lot of filler in this season with him, which was frustrating. Like literally just being him like, you're out of the boys, you're in the boys, you're out of the boys. Like I don't get it. I feel like they didn't know what to do with him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm not, again, it's one of these where it's like, I get the character arc and I like where we've ended up. Like, this show, it's unfortunate because it's almost a sign of a job almost too well done. Because the show's concept and the central conceit is Homelander on one side, Butcher on the other. They are the main characters of this show, and they promised us they're gonna have that battle, and that is a promise to the audience. And you're like, right, okay, that's the finale, or whatever. The finale is, or maybe the finale is dealing with the kind of the remnants of what comes of that battle. But that's what we're building towards here. So you do have to have a lot of stalling in the meantime, and you need the characters to get into a position where, first off, Butcher is a threat, and we can kind of see that between his superpowers and having the virus now. But also you need, and again, I appreciate the arc. Like, you need to kind of be like, right, so is Butcher a good guy? And if he's a good guy, then we have to take off all of these edges and we have to have him process and decompress kind of the anger and rage that is building inside him that fuels this kind of mission at all costs to rid the world of Homelander, which isn't actually about protecting the world. It's about him getting personal revenge. So if you want to make that a typical good guy versus bad guy battle, you have to rid that of him. Or do you have Butcher go down the side of, I don't care what happens, I'm going to be consumed by this vengeance, and that's where it is. And I think, very similar to Frenchie Kimiko, I'm happy where we are. I was shaky on how we got here. I feel like that they made the metaphor very literal this season by giving him a literal angel and demon on his shoulders, which is a bit of a cliche. I'm okay with him embracing that vengeance, and I'm okay with Ryan, the Ryan plot failing being the reason. I feel like he jumped a bit too quickly. I feel like he lost all hope because Ryan said no once when they totally overwhelmed him.
It was,
with terrible planning.
It really escalated very quickly.
Yeah, the planning was, and I wasn't happy with that either. There's a few things that I wasn't happy about here. Like Ryan, for a start, we need to talk about Ryan. He is up there with Carl Grimes for me as one of the most annoying kids the TV shows try to make me root for. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not having a go at the actor. He's a young kid. He's following direction. To be honest, it's not about him. But I just can't get into the character and I feel disconnected with a lot of what he does. I felt a bit more connected to him when he had that moment last week of kind of defiance at the end. And I'm like, oh, we could be onto something here. Today, not so much. I understood the character movements. Mallory's death as well is another thing I have an issue with, because you have to consider, like, Mallory's in Gen V as well, albeit briefly. She is almost this world's Nick Fury, and her death should matter, and it was thrown away here. And it was thrown away, why? Because of shit planning, because her and Butcher didn't agree on a plan for how they're going to bring Ryan in. And Butcher actually seemed like the sane one here, whereas Mallory's like, you gotta go, I'm gonna kill you. Your dad's a rapist and he raped your ma, and then you have to kill him now. Like, that's gonna overwhelm anyone. It's a terrible plan. And I know this is about it. The story of The Boys is about a dysfunctional, kind of relatable family fight, like trying to fight insurmountable odds. But that didn't work for me because Mallory is the one person who is like the voice of reason in there. Mallory's the person who's gone, that's a terrible plan, you're idiots. and she's the one who kind of instigates it, and just throwing her away, I feel like you lose a lot. I'd have been okay with, I think it would have been dramatic enough to have Ryan physically attack her, but she survives, because I feel like that's dramatic enough of a decision for Ryan to actually harm her I don't feel like she had to die, and I feel like we've lost a lot in the series through that, because she is kind of the person who puts the brakes on the boys and can bring them back into line and gives us a bit of hope and gives the show a bit of narrative structure. Having said that, I'm into where we landed. I feel like it's a good setup, but again, like it's the how we got here that I have issues with. We're talking about Homelander already, so let's get into it. Okay, he's now in total power, but it was a roller coaster to get here. This is one that I find really interesting, and this is one where I'm kind of this has kept me on the tracks. Aside like this Homelander's arc has kept me on the tracks here. Aside from obviously when it kind of leaned heavily in and a bit too heavily and clumsily into the kind of Trumpiness of it all. But I do like how he stayed true to his character. I like the weirdness of it. We got the breastfeeding here. We got the gray pubes, which were again referred to the jar of pubes. I like how even when they're trying to build him as this unstoppable villain, who now officially has that power, how there was still enough room for character beats, like making Firecracker move cracked me up, where it's like the next scene. No, that's okay. Like she's an idiot for not know. Like again, he's so arrogant. This is Anthony Starr's performance. But like he expects everyone to read his mind at all times, but he can't communicate. You know, he's just a doofus. And that brings me back to Sage's line about it, where it's like the one person you can't defeat. Now she didn't answer that, but we're left in fair that she's speaking about himself. And that's true. He is his own worst enemy here. Like in this episode, he pushes his two most powerful allies in Ryan and Newman away in one episode because of just tantrums and just like impatience and just petulance. There's that moment where he doesn't realize that he has to kill half of Vought, and then he's just like, all right, yeah, let's just do that. I like that element where he's just an idiot at the say. He's just a jock. He's a jock,
Yeah.
but he can kick everyone's ass. What were your thoughts on kind of the Homelander plot and where we ended up in this episode?
I think where we ended up, I thought was a little predictable. Like I pretty much as soon as the season started, I was like, okay, Homelander is going to end the season as president, and we kind of got close enough to that.
Yeah, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there was always going to be the Nazi parallels here. It kind of felt like got to a kind of natural conclusion of him having his own, Night of the Long Knives. And yeah, I feel like a bit of this season was them not knowing what to do with Homelander. Like, I mean, pretty much the start of the season felt like it was just like Homelander is just getting bored of of existing and doing things. And I was kind of like, I felt like the writers were probably in that same mindset of like, what do we do with Homelander now? We kind of feel like we've done this, we've done that. Again, I do think it's kind of feels like a case of maybe a character living past its shelf life. I haven't read the comics because honestly, I find the comics to be quite. I mean, vulgar is one way of putting it. I just think that they're mindless shite compared to a lot of other comics. And Garth Ennis is a good writer. He's written Preacher. I love that, and that's vulgar. But I just feel like it was more edgy than it was worth dealing with the story for it. But I feel like in the comics, I don't know, is Homelander the villain the whole time? I don't know, is there other villains? I feel like they should have naturally moved past him at this point. I don't know. That's a gripe with the larger season. That being said, I like the dynamic we're getting about him having the son and trying to manipulate the son and mold the son in his own image, and that's why I think the dynamic of Butcher and Homelander kind of fell flat, not having them in the same room, but also the fact it was continued because of this pseudo war between who's going to have the say in Ryan. I kind of it reminds me a lot of Invincible, to be honest. The kind of whole dynamic of Homelander and Ryan. But as far as yeah, it felt like they didn't move him on too much. It's pretty much just him trying to take all power. And I don't know if it was necessarily that captivating or interesting. It does feel like he's basically just surrounding himself with yes men, and I'd love to see the repercussions of that eventually. I don't know if we're going to get that though. I don't know if the show is going to plan anything that in depth of like, oh, well, you surrounded with all these sycophants, and now look what's happened as a result of that. I feel like it's more likely to just end in smack, smack, slam, slap, pow, kapow, and all that kind of stuff. But like I don't know, I find the Homelander character very, very interesting. Just basically because of how weird he is. And I do like the dynamic between him and Sage. Because I think they really highlighted how stupid and kind of impulsive, I suppose, he is in this season. Now, I do think the Sage character, as much as I like her, it's so, and I've seen a lot of people say the exact same thing I was thinking, which is that anytime you have a character that's like, that's right, I'm the smartest character in the world. No, you're as smart as the person writing you, with access to the internet, you
yes.
know. And that's why I really I didn't like at the end of this episode where like it's all gone to shit, and then she's like, "That's right, my plan worked perfectly." I'm like, oh, because that is
Do we
such
believe
lazy
that? Do
writing.
we believe that that was her plan, or do we believe? Because there's two ways of writing that. She could go in and be like, "I've managed to salvage together the plan based off the shit show that followed, and I managed to put it together and make and patch it up and make it work." Or do we believe that the writers are genuinely telling us that this was part of her plan?
No, I think. Well, I think the writers are going to tell us as part of the plan. But I think
Oh,
genuinely,
that's
like,
weak.
yeah, I mean, like, it would be more interesting as a character for her to be like, no, I salvaged your mess, and then
Yeah.
it would also imply that Homelander needs her more than that ever because when he fucks up, she can piece it back together.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is that what they're implying? I don't know.
Mm.
Like,
I feel the
it's
same, by the
hard
way.
to
I
tell.
feel the same as you, but I
Yeah,
feel the other way is better. Where
yeah,
it's
it is.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, I kept my
yeah,
eyes on the prize and I got us where we needed to get to, and we won.
yeah.
You know, and
I think it's just.
I can fix your
Yeah,
fuck
I don't
ups.
know. I think it's. I'm hoping it's that because I hate the trope of whenever like something goes wrong and then evil character number one says, "That's right,
Mm,
it all went perfectly." I'm like, that's just lazy writing.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't know. Yeah, but Homelander this year, I kind of feel like again, I think that character was kind of set up for next year. I feel
yeah.
like they didn't. There wasn't a lot of progression. I think as much as I would have liked. I think, or it just felt like he spent a lot of season not necessarily having a lot to do. Like at one point, he says he sends the rest of the seven to go kill the boys instead of doing it himself, and then they don't kill the boys, and that's just kind of the end of that scene. Like,
Yeah.
and I
There,
do think there's a certain point as well that I do think, and I've seen a lot of people make this argument. I do think they've kind of nuked him or lessened him as a threat, or nerfed him, I should say, not nuked him, nerfed him as a threat. Um, there's a one particular scene where it shuts out where like Huey is trying to escape from him, and like it's like he has X-ray vision, and that's fine. I know they don't want him to kill the character, but like I'm just thinking back to like the second episode of the show where he's just zipping around the whole city, and they have to hide, and that felt like a real proper threat.
mm,
Here, it felt like he obviously kills people in horrifically gruesome ways in this, but I felt like it was always in self-contained scenes where I feel like we didn't really get the all murderous, monstrous Homelander that we got in past seasons, and I feel like
yeah.
it's because they want to save that for next season. Maybe they want us to kind of shock us by making him feel a bit more sedate here, and then being like, "Oh God, we forgot how horrible he is." I don't know, but I don't know. Maybe
And
that's my own feeling.
no, I agree with that. I think that's kind of the problem. I feel like the problem with the boys, and with a lot of shows, and The Bear, you could say this, and Game of Thrones is another one where you can very much say this, okay? Because I think if you've ever written before, there's two ways of writing a story, okay? There's one way, which is where you're a gardener, and the other way is where you're an architect. And both are valid ways of doing it. A gardener will just plant seeds, and George R. R. Martin, for the record, and this is probably why he's not finishing the Song of Ice and Fire books to get go on a tangent. He's very much a gardener. Like he plants seeds, and then whatever comes of that, wherever he gets to, like he will allow the characters to grow based off the seeds he's planted, and then he'll make a decision based off that. So, like, what will happen, and that's where you get your shocking deaths in Game of Thrones, because it's like that person would logically die, but the architect in all of us is like that person can't die because they've got to stay to the finale. You know, we're trying to map it out in terms of that, okay? And but again, like the risk, and people will say, well, that's the best way to tell a story because that's shocking and it's real. But the problem with being a gardener is that then you might get to a stage where you're like, all of the characters are left in stasis and the world is just fucked. That's probably, and if you read the Song of Ice and Fire books, that's where they're pretty much at. Like, what is Sansa doing? Where is she going? Like, what's going on? And so many other storylines are kind of caught in that mode where you're like, I don't know how this ends there. An architect will map everything out from start to finish, you know? And so many times we get shows where They start amazingly. The first 2 to 3 seasons are phenomenal television, and that's because they're working in Gardner modes. They're building it up. They know the grand scheme of where they want the characters to be, but they have that space to tell the full story and just let mad shit happen at times. So it seems random to us, but it's actually logical to the characters and so on and so forth. But they don't have those stakes. But then they have to switch into architect mode when it comes towards the end. And we see this. And Lost is another one to add to the pile of TV shows. And I think The Boys is guilty of this, and it makes a lot of sense, where they've started as gardeners for the first few seasons, same with The Bear, and now they've had to go into architect mode because they're like, that's the ending we need to get to. And then, and again, when you look at it, Butcher, and I think Homelander can say the exact same thing. Where we end with Homelander is where we need to end. So they're succeeding in their architect roles, but the character decisions are just slow because they're like, oh yeah, we have to do stuff to get him there. And we have to do 8 different things because there's 8 episodes of television. And then that's where it's starting to feel disconnected, but where we're ending is fine. And look, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. We've seen how it can go horribly wrong with Game of Thrones, because then that became season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones. People like to use the lazy argument of they went off George R.R. Martin's scripts. I don't believe that's what went wrong with Game of Thrones. I think they had 13 episodes. They had this amount of budget. It became a maths equation, essentially, Game of Thrones became, and they knew they had to end on this point. And it was like, how do we get from here to here? And it became a mess. And it started to feel like we were on that writing journey where we're almost in every episode discussion like this, or you're having it work, you're writing the show for them. You're like, Arya should have gone here, and this should have happened here. And why did they forget about the people here? And the dragon died. Why? And that's what's kind of happened with this season. They had to get it from A to B to set up season 5. And I think they'll be fine. I think they've got that mapped out, but they just forgot at times. So we had to do weird shit. But I think you got to ask yourself, is it entertaining week to week? And I think Homelander is one of the people who was reliably entertaining every week, just because performance and the character's so fucked up that, even if it's ultimately going nowhere, like what did that episode, it was one of the better episodes this season where Homelander went back to the lab that kind of essentially built him. It didn't really achieve much on the character side, but fuck me, it's entertaining to watch.
And I think that's actually a good microcosm of the show itself. Like, even though I'm bitching about it here and there's problems with it, it's still like one of the most entertaining shows on TV. It's just a fun watch. Even when it's like a boring exposition scene, there'll be like, a weird fucking Spider-Man shooting web out of his arse, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a way of keeping the exciting stuff exciting, or the boring stuff exciting, I should say.
Yeah. Marvel can suffer from that as well, that Gardner architect thing as well, because Kevin Feige has to be the architect and the writers have to be Gardners.
Can I give you a really specific example of this? And it's funny because a couple of weekends ago I was having this conversation about Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, and I use this example as well. How I Met Your Mother is one of the best examples of how they fucked up the structure of their storytelling. So they were like, the whole time they were like, we are going to tell the story of how this guy met their mother. He's telling the kids. But then the show went on for so long that they freaked out. And they were like, we're now after telling 8 years worth of story where 2 characters have been shipped together and fallen in love. And then they got to the last season. They were like, okay, actually, we have to introduce the mother because the show is now ending. So because of that, they were like, okay. So they actually, against all odds, managed to make people love the mother character. And then the ending was, spoilers for How I Met Your Mother, he meets the mother. He meets the mother. Everyone actually now was like, you know what? We've moved on. We can accept the mother character. We don't care about that other character. And then the last episode, or the last 2 scenes of the show, it's like, and that's How I Met Your Mother. And then the kids on the couch are like, we don't care about how you met the mother. You should go with this character. So that was basically them sticking to the architecture structure instead of, and then went back and said, oh, wait a minute. What about all these seeds we planted? And because of that ending was so bad, by the way, that where basically the kids were like, yeah, we know how you met your mom, and our mom is dead now. You should go and marry our aunt, or whatever the fuck the ending of that was. The ending was so bad that when they re-released the show on DVD, they did a cut and got rid of that whole scene and were like, that's the real ending. That's an example of how you have to figure out one or the other. You can't do both. And this is an example of a show kind of knowing where it wants to end up, but also trying to get there week to week is hard. It's trying to go from, they know they're at A and they need to get to Z, and instead of just saying, going straight from A to Z, they're bringing us through the whole alphabet, and that doesn't always work.
Especially if, and I think the key thing is, if that's how you tell your story altogether, that works. But if you change
Yeah.
the structure, the audience can feel you've changed the structure, and I feel that's what's happened here.
Yeah.
Really quickly, I want to touch on Ashley, because she's such a great character. Survived here, but we didn't get to see what her new powers are. Just very quickly, what are you thinking? Have you got anything? It's got to be something disgusting. Like,
Yeah,
it definitely involves her
it's
clitoris.
probably. Yeah. She's like the
Like-
the female equivalent of Love Sausage, I think.
Oh, I don't even
I
want to
don't know.
speculate names. We'll get cancelled.
Yeah, this is like, where's the line?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I feel like that character is always kind of like the butt of the joke with Vought. So I don't think they want to give her anything that's actually a good power.
No.
I feel like it could be a case of hubris. I feel like there's going to be some power that's made that's kind of not ruined her life, but been something really awful to be like, well, you make her, but you go to bed with devils, and that kind of whole analogy. But then again, it's kind of weird because like it feels like logically Butcher should kind of have a bit of comeuppance as well. Like I also thought it was weird that Butcher, like even like in the third season where he got Tempe, it's like, don't worry, Butcher, you've got the best powers imaginable that are comparable to Homeboy or not Homeboy, Homelander.
Yeah.
A mix of Homelander and the boys. But and now he's got like venom powers, which by the way, I know we kind of just like said that. I don't know if I like him getting powers. I know the whole niche thing, like, oh, don't go chasing monster unless you become a monster kind of thing, but it kind of feels like it kind of changes the dynamic of the show a lot. I don't know, but as far as Ashley goes, I mean, like, I think it's weird they didn't show us the powers. I think the fact they didn't show us the powers means it's probably just going to be a big punchline. I think
it's Gen V. We're seeing her pop back up. She's in Gen V, and she is a character, and I think she's popping back up there somehow. It's an interesting one. Actually,
but I don't know if they can realistically give her a good power though. I mean, I think
no, she's not going to be a badass. She's not going to be in the end game. Like, she won't be the thing that clinches the Butcher versus Homelander fight.
Unless she like she's not going to show up and be like, and by the way, Homelander, it's not going to be anything like that. I think it's just going to be a punchline.
She's such a specific character though. Like, I need to do a rewatch, and I feel like if I did a rewatch, I'd figure out what her power is, because it's going to be a throwback to something. Like, they threw back to her losing her hair. I'm like, is she gonna like spit hairballs at someone or something like that? Like, there's gonna be a really specific throwback where we're like, yes, that, because there's no real rules for the boys. Like, the powers don't necessarily fit in with a character trait. Like, it's not like I remember the movie If that we reviewed a couple months ago. Not very good, John Krasinski, but they patted themselves on the back because they're like, the imaginary friends in this are what the child needs, and they have rules for it, which is an interesting concept. The boys doesn't do that because mainly most of the characters got their powers when they were kids, so it's just random. But I feel like hers are going to be very character based and very funny. And I actually, again, one of the wins for the season. She's always with. I'm delighted she made it to the end and had something to kind of go with as well. Someone who didn't make it to the end, Victoria Newman, rest in peace. Thoughts on her death, the consequences, how it happened, and kind of what led up to that.
Yeah, I don't know you have too much to say on that one. I mean, I think the character had logically reached the end point. I think like something had to give for what you have to imagine is Homelander kind of taking power. I thought her death was suitably violent and vicious. And again, you feel for Huey, who is just like watching this woman he loved get torn in half and covered in her blood, and it's like, oh, bye Huey, there you go. There's that one kick out the arse at the end of the season. But I think it worked in setting the stakes of Butcher's new power and the kind of brutality that he's prepared to bring to accomplish his goals. And I think that's really all I got from it. I didn't really mourn for the character. I pondered the stakes of what it means going forward. And I think that was kind of half the point of it as well. This was kind of the turning point of, and this is what season 5 is as a result of this, But as for the character herself, it's like, I did like the whole episode with her of coming out with superpowers, and I would love to see more ramifications for that, instead of just kind of being like assassination storyline, and this is what happens. But I mean, I did love the part where they were just on, the fire. What's the name of the show again?
Truth
Fire,
Bomb with
Truth, whatever.
Firecracker.
Truth Bomb. There we go. I was like Fire Bomb with Truth Cracker. I was like, I was like Fire Bomb.
What a random name.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's my superpower name, Truth Cracker. I can only tell the truth. Yeah. You could be called Truth Cracker, and anyone you touch has to tell the truth. There we go. I am a writer. There we go.
And if they don't, they become a cracker.
Yes, absolutely.
There you go. Like the food, not the racial slur.
Yeah.
Just to be clear there.
I'm already a cracker, yeah. But like I did like that moment where she just was like, I don't have powers, and then Homelander just lasered her in the neck. It was amazing. But aside from that, like I don't know what you do with her daughter. Because it became such kind of an afterthought.
I think that's done. I don't know if you noticed but like she ended up back in the same group home that Victoria did. So I think her story's done, and it's a tragedy, and that was devastating because again, Zoe's done nothing wrong. She was given by her mom as a source of kind of self-protection. So I think that's where she ended up, and I thought that was a really powerful point of moment. I tend to agree with you when it comes to Newman. I actually called this a few weeks ago when we discussed it, and it was one of those where I'm like, I'm proud of myself for being exactly right, because I'm like, she's gonna call Yui, say like she's gonna be pushed too far, call Yui, say I want to flip. And then that's probably going to lead to her dying. I thought she might try take out Homelander, and then it just goes tits. But like, I'm okay where it ended as well. I think
it must have been pretty traumatic as well for Jack Quaid to watch that, because they're going out in real life.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go. Fun fact. Yeah, I agree. Like, the only writ that doesn't work for me is I just don't know if I like the planning of it all, because again, I just don't get it with Homelander. I'm like, and again, like I'm in House of the Dragon mode, so I'm very used to doing Dragon Math, where I'm just like thinking about the strategy, and I'm like, you want to have this amount. I don't feel like where Butcher is right now, he has the numbers to be able to take out Homelander. I don't feel his powers versus Homelander's laser is going to get you before his venom claws do. And the virus, I don't know, evens up. But like, if you've Newman trying to pop Homelander's head and there's a distraction, I feel like just the strategy of it was off. And it's like, but Homelander's like, yeah, but she's a soup. But it's like, so you're going to take her out with your superpowers? Like, and I get that they're going for hypocrisy there. But that part didn't necessarily work for me. But I agree, there's nothing left here. She's lost all her opportunity. It's a finale. You needed a big death. You had boxes they need to tick. It was shocking. It was cool. The powers that the Butcher has are cool and feel big enough for the character. And again, him just like absolutely pulverizing Newman, who it was a running joke how weak the boys' attempts at killing her, like at the start of the season, where a joke that actually worked. I liked the bit where she got shot in the head, and then she's like, "What the fuck? Stop trying to kill me!" I like it worked for what it needed to, and on balance, it was what it was. Right, let's discuss where we're kind of left. Okay, so everyone but Butcher and Annie is now being held by Homelander's new army of soups. He's basically now pulling the strings of the president, but Butcher is free and has the virus. Annie's powers are back for reasons, but like, that's fine. I think I can forgive that, because I'm like, yeah, you need something on the other side. The odds look insurmountable in typical story fashion. What are your thoughts on kind of the ending and anything we kind of haven't touched on? And obviously Soldier Boy as well. Like, sorry, I forgot to mention him. We saw in the post-credit scene, Soldier Boy's still there.
Yeah, I think it's sets up an interesting scene 5. I think I'm probably least interested in like the clash between Butcher and Homelander, I think, coming into the new season. Because I don't know, is there anything they can do outside of just, and it's kind of weird, like, and I think it's weird in a way that I feel like The Boys is sort of kind of becoming a little bit of a parody of what it was parodying, like with, like it was like, oh, like Marvel movies and all this, and then it's like all these spin-offs of The Boys and all these characters, and then the superpower punch up and everyone has powers, and it's like, which again feels like it kind of is deviating from what it was. Because I don't know, is there much they can do aside from like, hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they all group up and take out Homelander or something, or else maybe the whole a virus that can take out everyone. I don't know, but outside of that, what I'm interested in is I'm interested to see what they do with A-Train, because like I would have had nailed on that, like, yeah, he's going to die this season, and he didn't.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
I'm interested in seeing him coming back and make a difference. I am, as much as I find Ryan to be a bit of an irritating character, I'm interested to see what he does. Especially because it's like, he's kind of pissed off both his dads now. So I don't know what happens there. So I just think that's an interesting ball to have in the air. Starlight is a character that I'm interesting, and I'm interested in for, I think, the wrong reasons. It feels like that character like kind of didn't really, and we got a little bit of it with the shapeshifter in this episode. She hasn't really like owned up to any of her wrongs or wrong. Like there was that one moment where I felt like she was going to own up to Firecracker, about what she had done wrong and that kind of thing, and then it was just a ruse. So I kind of feel like she's kind of due, not some karma, but I feel like she has to kind of own up to her own problems. But God, that sounds boring. So I don't know. I feel like I want to see what they do with that character. Outside of that, Soldier Boy is an interesting one because by right, I assume he was going to, be a difference maker in trying to take down Homelander at some point. But at the same point, now Homelander knows where he is. So I don't know again, for me, there's a lot of, and again, the question of how are the boys going to, become the boys again, because you have to have that moment at the end. But is the ending of the boys that they all have to team up and take down Billy Butcher? I don't know. Because again, there would be probably a more personal stake there. I don't know. So I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities for season 5. But I think like the central dynamic that the show set out with, which is we need to take down superheroes. The worst one is Homelander. We all need to take down Homelander. That's kind of gone. We also have, by the way, something that no one is mentioning, because it was only mentioned once in the season. Maeve. Is Maeve going to come back at some point? There. She's out there. Yeah. Are we going? And again, all of this stuff sounds interesting on paper. It's going to be execution for me, or whether it works or not. Because we've seen a million superhero punch-ups. I don't just want like, this is Vought versus the other rightful 7 or whatever the fuck. I don't want any of that. It's about the characters that I want to see. And it's weird because like The Boys isn't always like a character-driven show. Sometimes it's just mindless entertainment. But I think what they've set up works. And I think it's the ones that I have a question mark about that are interesting. I think Ryan is interesting to watch, to see where he ends up and where he ultimately lies. Is he going to have to take down his dad? I don't know. Is he going to see that Butcher is actually a threat now as well and take him out? And then are we going to basically start the cycle again with a new all-powerful super being who can take down everyone? I don't know. But yeah, I feel like it sets up for a strong last season, even if I don't know where it goes. And I think that's what I'm more excited for. Like, because there's some things I think are very obvious where they could go. It's the stuff that I'm not sure about that has me intrigued.
I'm not worried about this at all. I liked it. And just a few notes as well. Like, I think Sam, Kate, and Cindy are amazing additions to the 7, and their powers are just totally like untapped minds so far as well. I think it's really interesting how now season 2 of Gen V will play into things. Obviously it's got its own plot that it needs to follow and its own kind of the holes for the characters to get out of as well in that kind of story, and I think they're going to be a factor as well. I think definitely be caught up on Gen V by the time the season 5 comes around, and it's just a great show too. I'm not worried about I like Love Sausage as well. I don't think he's a great addition, but I did love how like he is Mother's Milk's arch nemesis. I thought MM was going to die. I thought they were going to keep A-Train because he's got powers and he has something. I thought MM, I was like, I don't see what he's got left. Like, he is down to bare bones. And
I thought Frenchie would die as well. I thought Frenchie had run out of rope, and I thought once they gave him his redeeming moment, I thought he could. Yeah, I think he could in season 5, but I think he has to be like the devastating season 5 death. I don't think you kill him off for a full season. I think I think anyone's on the table. Like, again, but I think also as well, like where the match are played. Like, again, you've got Soldier Boy. Is really intriguing because we're looking at it and we're like, haha, he's someone who can take out Homelander. Why?
He's Homelander's dad. The only
Yeah.
reason he was anti-Homelander, if you go back to season 4, is because he pretty much made a deal with Butcher. Otherwise, he's like, "You're my son. This could be interesting." So I think Soldier Boy's on Homelander's side, and Homelander's waking him up, and they're having a moment. Like I'd say, I didn't. Again, that's just a bit of misdirection from the writers, but I think like when you play out the match, it's like they're going to be together, and that's going to like increase the odds against it. I don't worry about this show though, because two reasons. One, we've presumably, now they may do an extended or 2-part season or whatever. A lot of these shows do kind of do stunts for the last season, but if it's BAU, we've got 8 episodes left. That means shit's hitting the fan in every episode. We're getting real stakes all the time, and there's more than enough stakes to go around to fill up the 8 episodes. So I think they've got this, and I feel like again, the show still can succeed as just an entertaining bit of popcorn TV week to week, you know. But where it really thrives is where there's character-based stakes, and I think there's. I don't. First off, I don't mind the Marvel like setup for the final season because it is a superhero story. That's how superhero stories end. And yeah, it's nice that The Boys satirizes that, but at the end of it, it's the genre that it's in. You know what I mean? Like it's like a horror satire eventually also will be judged on if it's scary, you know? So I don't feel like we should judge this for being for falling towards superhero tropes, but how it executes, I feel like you're right in saying. But what you've got to look at and the questions you've got to ask is, well, are there character arcs to be finished? Yes. Frenchie now has to literally escape a trap. We have to see Frenchie become his own person and walk into the sunset with Kimiko. Kimiko has now spoken, so she has broken herself free of that trauma, now arguably through more trauma. So again, that how that works, I don't know, but there's something there. Annie has to find who she is and how she fits in. Is she Starlight anymore, or is she Annie January? Is there something there? Yui, we have to figure out who is Yui. Does Yui make it to the end? You know, I feel is someone that he's either going off into the sunset with his family or he's a tragic death that's waiting to happen. And I feel like it could be the latter. You know, you've got Butcher as well. Like, how's that going to play out? Like, is Kessler? I don't feel that battle is won necessarily. They're trying to portray it as it's going very one direction, but he could be the villain, or he could have that kind of last minute non-redemptive redemption. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't take away his sins, but he ultimately does the right thing at the last moment. So again, I feel like, and then you've got Homelander is solely based on like, you know, daddy issues going both ways. You know, he's got Ryan and now he's got Soldier Boy. So he's going to play into that. So I feel like all the big questions we have are character based, and I trust this writing team to be able to resolve them. And I feel like they know where they're going. If anything, the problems that I speak of in this season are just, like we said, just getting us to where we needed to be. But there's more than enough if they just do 8 episodes for them to be 8 fucking box office episodes, and I cannot wait. That's pretty much everything for season 4. We're just going to do reflections, and first off, before we get to ours, I want to check in because we had Kev Keen, who's regularly contributed on The Boys, reach out with some interesting thoughts, and I wanted to include them in here. So here's Kev's thoughts on season 4.
Holy fucking shit. That was fucking class. Loved it. Loved every second of it. But yeah, poor motherfucking Huey in this season, I have to say. But yeah, I really, really can't wait to hear you talking about it. And yeah, for a season that kind of had a couple of dips, they fucking nailed the landing of this one. So cannot fucking wait for next season though, and that's a good thing. Although I will say, it's kind of reminiscent a little bit of The Bear for me, where I feel like this season is mostly there to set up the next season. And if the next season of The Bear is the final one and the next season this is the final one, it's just some interesting parallels there, I think. But yeah, fucking loved it. Fucking brilliant.
Yeah, Kev, very much on the same page as myself, and I've kind of already played my hand for how I felt about it. You know, I'm not worried about this show. Like I said, I feel like there's more than enough. This was a dip, but I feel like there was enough in the last 3 episodes that some shows you're like, oh, The Wire, season 1, but season 2, season 3, 4, 5, you know, I don't feel this was a but season 4. I don't feel like this was a massive dip from the normal quality. I don't feel like this is something where we'll have to make a mental asterisk in our head for you just get through season 4. It's fine. I feel there was enough to like in season 4 that it holds its own while being a significant dip, but it's not like it didn't fall off a cliff. It didn't leave me worried about the show. I still really like the show. I like all the characters. I was entertained week to week, and I'm looking forward to season 5. So again, there's no damage done, but was this as good as that? No. Do I feel that season 5 has more than enough left in the tank? Yeah, I still love this show, and I'm still very much on board. And maybe that's recency bias because I feel the last episode was the strongest of the season, but I'm still on board. Tom, I'll let you have the final word on season 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said there is pretty valid. Like, I think as much as I think there's some things like that could possibly be retreaded a little bit as far as character arcs go in the next season, this season is alone wasn't filler, or if it was entertaining filler. It was a bit of a setup season. You know, there is stuff that's being set up for the next season, but as a standalone season, well, I think it's a dip. It's not like a disastrous fall off. It's more like, well, you know, you probably weren't rushing to watch it as much as you would have maybe other seasons. It was still really entertaining. I think again, it wouldn't put me off recommending the show by any means. It's kind of more of the same, and I think that's a problem you kind of run into with shows that run as long as The Boys, or some shows that maybe don't change up their dynamic that much. Some people are saying that like the shock value isn't there that it used to be. Yeah, but there was also some really shocking moments still in this season, so I don't think that's valid at all. I think, yeah, this is one that when you go back and watch The Boys as a complete thing, this isn't going to be even seen as much of a dip, to be honest. It'll probably just be seen as like, man, they're building to something. And I think that's what it was. And what it's building to, I think, could be a very, very satisfying ending overall.
Fingers crossed, because we're fans of The Boys here on the Dragon Boys this summer. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. What's coming up in your world in the Pop Cult Pod? Anything to plug?
Yeah, plenty. At the moment, as of this recording, I put up my Any Good review of Twisters, which is our 49th review. We're going to have a 50th episode very soon, which is really exciting. So if you thought I was very negative here, go and listen to me talk about Twisters. It's a lot more positive. Aside from that, I'll be back here to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. But I also have Deadpool and Wolverine content coming to the channel very, very soon. I'm not going to say what it is, but I will be promoting it from next week. August, we're going to have Week Shark Movie Week and more stuff. So yeah, plenty on the Pop Cult Pod, so be sure to check it out.
Amazing, good stuff, and you can follow that, and I recommend you do. If you're listening on Spotify, you've got the link in the show notes, or you can follow Tom on the link to his pages on any of our socials. I recommend you give him a follow on socials and also on YouTube as well. Tom, always a pleasure to have you on. You mentioned it there, and I'm looking forward next week on the Dragon Boys this summer. We will be doing a deep dive into Deadpool and Wolverine. We'll also be touching on House of the Dragon as we hurtle towards the final 2 episodes of that season. Tom, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and catch up next week on Deadpool and Wolverine. But until then, for Tom Pott, for Ger Leggett, this has been the Dragon Boys of Summer. Follow us on the Page 180 socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, if you haven't already. Links are all in the show notes. But until next week, peg the patriarchy, peg it in all its holes.